All right, welcome back to the Wallace branch. And we're starting out from a little different perspective from usually, where we're starting out with a switch engine instead of a road engine. And this switch engine is a little bit blocked in here, so I'm going to try something different as a way to get out of the situation, which is to actually use our turntable. I think this may be the first time we've used this particular turntable in this playthrough. The only purpose, though, is just to get out of this blocked track. And yes, we're going to definitely be doing a little bit of switching in this episode here in Wallace, Idaho, preparing to load some pipes on the bulkhead flat cars in the background, and then we'll also be dealing with some ore cars that need to move on to Kellogg, something we've been working on the last few episodes, but will finally, I believe, be completed in this episode. And we'll also be taking a look at, of course, the NP local heading over Lookout Pass, which should be arriving in Saltese shortly. I can hear that the hotbox detector at Borax just went off in the background. And I believe that horn that you are hearing in the background is the SW-1200 coming back into town with the lumber cars. This is our US RS2, Union Pacific RS2. And I have tried my hand at making some cabs for the RS2 and RS3, and it is still a work in progress. And one of the things that I'm currently working on this weekend, I hope, is working on getting the bell animated. Not the exterior bell, but the rope for the bell in the interior of the cab. Really like to have it animated just in a very primitive way. Okay, now we're going to switch these bulkhead flats into the Wallace warehouse in the background and start picking up some of those pipe loads. One thing about the series sort of winding down as we come to a smaller and smaller list of tasks to complete is that we get to focus a little bit more on individual tasks, individual switching operations. If I had a criticism of my playthrough style, it's that because there's so much jumping around, it can be a little bit, I don't know, difficult to watch, I think. And I hope that you've appreciated that I've focused on efficiency and going as quickly as possible rather than maybe realism. Realism, of course, probably would require just sticking to a single train, because what realistic engineer actually is jumping among trains? That's not really realism. But I think if I had to do the series over again, I probably would try to figure out some way to be more prototypical. Don't know how I would do that, but I still think that that is the major downfall of the series from a viewing perspective. In terms of my own viewing, I'm the main customer for my own playthroughs, I'd have to say. Okay, next we're going to shoot over to Silverton, right next door to Rafe Vaughan Williams, who's loading bottles. All right, we are with Rafe Vaughan Williams here at the Silverton Bottle Plant, Northern Pacific number 50, and we have loaded most of this train with bottles, and all but 3 cars are filled up, and I am going to fill up one more car, and I'm going to leave the other 2. And what that's going to do is we're going to leave these 2 to handle the general goods pickup in Mullen. Now we do need to pick up some more cars here and in Silverton, but the cars here are going to be taken back to the Wallace yard and left on the UP tracks, and they will go off the map on the UP side. They'll be westbound, whereas the other bottle cars will be going eastbound on the Northern Pacific. So that'll be handled separately. That's my vision anyway. And yes, the 2 railroads are cooperating when it comes to switching. I do restrict the Northern Pacific trains from going into the Union Pacific side, but this is considered an industry inside Wallace, and I sort of have the 2 railroads kind of cooperate on those industries. All right, we are back with the NP local, or BN local. And the situation is that I had put this train onto autopilot here to go to Saltese track number 2. But what you're about to see is the reason why the train stopped at this red block signal. Couldn't go through to track number 2 because there's a caboose sitting there. No problem, because what we have to do in the end is drop off some empties here so that we can pick up some pipes on this track. And I think that's something that the RS2, which is already sitting here, can handle the switching out of, and the fact that there's a caboose here ultimately will help because we're going to deliver some more bulkhead flat cars later, and then that RS3, sorry, did I say RS3 or RS2? The RS3 will be able to take those loaded cars off the map with its caboose in a little bit. And honestly, now that I look at it, I'd say the caboose is totally fouling the switch there, so we're going to have to go handle it immediately. All right. Things are going fine, according to what I can tell. I don't see any big mistakes. I don't think we waited there long. I heard the hotbox detector go off, and then not too long after, we arrived here at Saltese. So this train is actually making pretty good time in my estimation. Except that I, of course, overshot that. No, I didn't overshoot it, actually. I just need to decouple. And I'm going to have to check my spreadsheet to see how many bulkhead flats we need to bring back onto the map for picking up all the pipes here. Definitely, however many we're leaving, was not going to cut it. I think we picked up 5 already. We may have 9 to go. So yeah, maybe this is 4. But again, to be checked a little bit later. All right, that might have been fudging it too much on the horn. All right, now we're going to put this on autopilot to de Borgia. And before we go there, I'm definitely going to check Haugen, make sure that the main track is clear. And this is one way to see which direction that the autopilot would like to go by clicking on the driver window, details window. So yeah, based on this, I'm going to add in Haugen NP main. All right, coming back to our RS2, looks like things are proceeding apace. We have loaded 4 cars with pipes. And we're just ready to shunt these off to the side and load 2 more cars. And in the background, I can see that our our SW1200 has indeed arrived on track 3. Again, I'm fudging it a little bit on the horn there, I'd have to say, relative to the ideal. And sorry for spinning around so much. I know that that makes it somewhat disorienting to watch. It's all unconscious naturally, but try to be more thoughtful. And now I see in the background, in the far distance, that's Tasha Yar with the GP9s pulling into town with the empty loads of, empty reefers. And that is the train that is going to be taking these pipes, along with the ore cars, westbound. Okay, we're going to come back to this, and I hope it doesn't pose a problem that I actually brought this one loaded car back. This might be a rare example of a track that I've organized to both unload and load the same asset, because this is sort of like it's not a producer of pipes, it's actually supposed to be kind of just a distribution center where we could, on some occasions, bring these pipes inbound from Saltese, so we're going to have to check this later. Now here, I'm just taking the caboose off this end so that we can couple up to that UP consist. Some yards are for classification, and some yards are for getting out of the way. This is the latter. It would be awesome if the driver control center or the dispatch manager could enable you to throttle down another locomotive without clicking on that train and swiveling the camera all over the place. That would make trains really stand out, in my opinion. So yeah, I have the dispatch manager pulled up just to make this point. You know, if you look at what information it shows, well, first of all, it shows everything by default, and I really wish you could sort of change what your default viewpoint is. Well, there's so many things I'd love to change about this. But yeah, I really would like the dispatch manager to do what a dispatch manager seems to be mainly for, which would be dispatching the trains as opposed to dispatching like industries per se. But of course, that's not what the designers wanted. So if I just check drivers, yeah, then I can see the name of the engineer and I can see the number of their consist. But I can't see what locomotive they're in charge of, which is, for me, that's key information. And then status, not in a train. Well, you know, I could just not show the drivers that are not in the train, actually. You know, what's the difference between idle and manual control? I think idle means that they were on autopilot, but their tasks, their instructions ran out or something like that. So most of my trains would typically be on manual control and just sitting there. What I really would like to see is just the speed. I see that Woody Harrelson just changed from being directed to go to Haugen to being going to Bourges. I've never actually seen that before. That's kind of neat. So yeah, I really would love to see the speed, and you know, ideally there would be like a throttle control, but yeah, for me, seeing the names of the engineer, the vehicle that they're operating, the tonnage of the train, the speed of the train. Now, I think that the game doesn't actually have any kind of location information, although you can click on the arrow here and put show, and then here you see a view of a little mini map, although this driver is not in a train, so I don't know why he's on the mini map, but if we click on this driver, let's see, who do we have here? See, because I can't see the speed, so therefore I don't remember which driver we have, but it's Tasha Yar, right? So show. Now we see the mini map, and this mini map is pathetic. I mean, it is so small. Right now, I understand where she is, but a lot of times if it's just out in the middle of nowhere, you wouldn't be able to see anything from that map. So that map to me is not useful. So yeah, the game doesn't have any information like this train is in Wallace. That's information the game does not have, whereas the game does have information about how many tons are in that consist and how fast it's moving, or how fast the driver is moving. That is evidently in the game based on the fact that that is already shown in the driver control window. But if you want to see those at the same time, you would have to cross-reference between this window and that very, very old school and very difficult, poorly organized, poor spatial layout of this window. So here in the dispatch manager, I can see all the drivers at a glance, but I can't see any relevant information about them. Whereas in the driver control center, I can see a lot of the information, although not the speed, but I can see the locomotive that they're running. I can see whether they're on manual control or idle. I can view this map. So there's some overlap between the information here. And then I can see they're totally not useful for me, their face. I don't need that. And I don't really need the picture of the locomotive either, although I can understand that that might be helpful for some people. I have such a small number of locomotives on this route that maybe I don't need the picture to differentiate. But maybe that would be useful if you have a very large route with a lot of different locomotives. I'm not sure. And just now, I understand the beta for the new release of TLR is ongoing, just announced last night. That will be several weeks ago by the time you're viewing this, because I'm having to record some issues in episodes in advance. But now TLR, Trans-Living Railroad, will have passenger support. And then it also resolves some of the complaints very early on in the series when I talked about HD terrain. I mentioned some complaints that I had about the texture limit and how it's very difficult. Like if you run out of textures on your baseboard, then it just replaces the least used textures automatically, but you don't know which one that is. But now you will be able to figure out which one that is. You'll be able to find out how many textures are used on each baseboard and what percentage they have. And maybe you can do bulk replace of them. I don't know if that's coming, but definitely it would be desired on my part. But clearly just knowing that information is an improvement and seems to indicate that they were aware that that texture limit is something that could be improved on through giving the player better control, not by eliminating the texture limit, just by giving more information to the player. Now, when I started this series, I was and always have been a fan of the Northern Pacific and, to a lesser extent, all the other railroads affiliated with the Northern Pacific, like the Burlington Northern, the Great Northern, the Burlington Route, SP&S, anything that became part of the Burlington Northern system. Even the Frisco, although not really, I just didn't know that much about the Frisco. But yeah, in playing this route, I've really come to appreciate the Union Pacific color scheme and liveries, and also freight car schemes a lot more. Okay, now we're going to jump over to Silverton and see how the progress is there. Okay, naturally we have finished our loading operation here. I'm just going to grab these two boxcars and we're going to take off. And put on autopilot and just go to Wallace track number, UP track number 1. And it apparently is moving. Alright, much to my surprise, the pipe track only loaded pipes. It did not unload that one car that arrived loaded. That is, of course, what I want, but it does make me curious. How is the setting? What did I do? And is that the way I want it for the future? Should I remember this for the future? Obviously, it's simpler this way if Wallace is only a supplier of pipes, but we'll see. We'll see how we want to handle it in the future. And yeah, that feels like a very quick operation. I'm certainly glad that this loads as many pipes as it does. I did, initially I just had one little gantry crane, but of course these gantry cranes are just fixed on those little concrete blocks. So then I added a bunch more so that they could conceivably load all the cars basically at the same time, like the whole track. This isn't just now, this is when I made the route, so I'm not cheating. Now, because we have a train coming in on track 1, I'm going to align the switches this way, and I'm not going to take this train all the way forward. I'm just going to slowly inch up to the intersection and then prepare to switch out. And of course, the junction derailment prevention rule is going to try to help me out by switching this switch, but we're not going to go that way. We're going to stop and wait for that local train to come right on in. Oh, sorry, wait for the Northern Pacific number 50 to come right on in. And I intended to leave a little bit of clearance there. I think I can leave just a few more feet. And I can see that train coming around the mountain. All right, here we are in the quaint little town of Borgia, and it is amazing how quickly we got here. And without my intervention, on the way back over the pass going westbound earlier, I had intervened and put the speed up to 40 miles an hour, 41 miles an hour. I did not do that here, so I assumed that it went normal speed. It just went abnormally fast, according to me. Didn't check in on what the speed was, but I had the problem earlier that too often they were driving at 22 miles an hour and so forth. And speaking of going too slowly. Anyway, here we're going to drop off these logs at the Borgia lumber mill. And in order to do that, we actually have to decouple our helper engine and maybe sort out the caboose because we don't really need to take the helpers with us. And then we also need to do something else, which is that there's currently a Milwaukee train occupying the loading area. So the lumber mill has requested that there be an engineer sent over to move that train. Toot sweet. And as to why these logs have not unloaded, I thought that this whole area was an unloading track, but apparently not. So we'll just have to see. Just there, I was looking for that locomotive, and I thought, I don't see him there at the intersection. I guess he's not reached it yet. But of course, the opposite is the situation. We actually went far overshot. So that means we're probably far overshooting on the other side, right? These are logs that are coming from Cox Spur, right on Lookout Pass, and this is one of the daily tasks. So it has to be done today. Of course, pretty much everything has to be done today at this point because this is the end of the playthrough. But today game time. So we won't finish up in this section in this session, but in this episode. But we will finish up today. And I would anticipate that today would be in the next episode. Yeah, something like the next episode. And maybe we'll just have to make it so that it definitely does finish in the next episode. Could be a 2-hour episode, we'll see. Not that I'm overly eager, I'm having a great time. So this is my best guess as to where we should stop it. Okay, maybe 2 more feet. If we can get 2 cars, that's good. If we could get 3, that's even. This locomotive doesn't really have to go anyplace special. Just need to get it out of the way. All right, I promised some more switching in Wallace, and I think we're delivering. Of course, we'll really be delivering once this train leaves the station. I just need to set aside these two empties because they're not going with the train. All right, first things first, let's take this train forward. And I'm gonna leave the ore. I'm gonna have that be at the head end of the train. In fact, I'm gonna have the ore and the pipes. They will be together at the end of the train. Then it will be correctly blocked in order to go to the smelter. Leaving the caboose there. Now, I would love to sort of just kick these cars, but the real reality is that I'd have to kick them pretty hard to be very sure that they would go all the way uphill instead of just starting to roll backwards, because I think this is all on a 1.2 degree grade. Now, I'm going to inch forward, but I'm going to go check on Dvorak just a moment. All right, I checked on that, and it's not quite done. And I also checked on the loading area to make sure that it was adjusted appropriately to unload 3 cars. And in fact, it had not been adjusted properly. I don't know how that could it be. Could it have been reset at some point, or did I never adjust it? That was one of the first areas of the route that I set up with the MI2 tracks. So, yeah, it's a mystery. It's too long ago. I can't remember. I guess I'll have to look at the first episode because I do believe I think we unloaded some log cars there at one point. Okay, the issue there was I was controlling the wrong train. For a second there, I thought, oh, we're not stopping? And then I was like, we're not even slowing down, we're accelerating. Maybe I'm going the wrong direction. But that's when I realized that we were actually controlling this SW1200 in the background there. It does happen more often than I'd like to admit. For anybody who likes ore cars and ore loads, this is your shot. I did look up pictures of what does lead ore look like? What does zinc ore, or sphalerite, I guess? What does that look like? And yeah, I didn't find. First of all, I found quite a variety. There's rocks come in all different colors, and it has nothing to do with their lead content per se. More to do with their iron content and other minerals, I suppose. Not to mention temperature and pressure and the different processes, folding and... All right, we have the pipes. We have the ore. Now we need the bottles and the caboose. This is going to be one of the longest and one of the heaviest trains we've had on the route, so it'll be interesting to see if we are able to pull the whole thing. And no, I'm not going to block the rest of the train, I'm just taking all the other cars off the map, so that's what I'm considering. 3,000 tons. But it's all downhill from here. I should say it's all downhill from here, and then furthermore, more than half the weight of the train is going to get dropped off at the smelter anyway. I think the ore alone is 2,000 tons. I don't know about you, but I think it's pretty. I guess that's why I'm a rail fan. And talking about clearing out the Wallace yard, this is great. Not that it was congested at this point. We'd actually had several tracks clear, but now it's really going to have a lot of tracks clear. And no, I am not accustomed to managing long trains like that. I did stop a little bit in advance, but apparently not in advance enough. All right, we are right at time, I think. And it's obvious that this is going to take a few more minutes. In fact, this train is moving so slowly that I'm tempted to jump over to Dborja. And the question is, should we cut it here, or should we at least assemble the train? And it feels a little bit wrong to just leave it in the middle of assembling the train. So I think we're going to have to go over. That's just the way it is. And yes, in the background, I'm moving this locomotive into position so that we can potentially take those two boxcars back with us to Mullen. 4 miles an hour feels fast compared to 1 mile an hour, that's for sure. Now, thinking about this, of course, maybe it's going to be a best option for us to switch out the steam locomotive and take those 2 boxcars back to Mullen with the SW 1200. The Union Pacific does have a turntable in Mullen, but the NP does not. I'm very surprised that we actually managed to stop that train. Now let's see how fast it stops. And I think for the next playthrough, this is going to end up becoming the new outbound track for the Union Pacific because it will have a caboose blocking the end of it. Now we know that this train can make it. 3,800 tons, and we've got 7,600 horsepower. And yes, we are going up grade at a 1.5% grade, so it's not easy. But it's all downhill from here. Okay, ready to go? I'm ready to go. So let's go drive via Smelter Yard Track 2. Just in case, I'm going to drive to Smelter Yard Track 1, because I'm sure that that one is free. And before we go, let's jump back to Borgia. Since we're already over time, why don't we just get more overtime, right? And I'm going to go ahead and mark this task as complete because the logs have been delivered. All right, with that actually completes the task here at this Dvorak lumber mill because we're just dropping off these logs. And we don't even need to stick around. We don't even need to recouple with the caboose or anything because we're just going to make a power move. We're going to move these 2 locomotives back to Missoula, and we're going to pick up some more cars for the morning mine and for the task to take on next session. So I will see you next time. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and we are rapidly heading towards the conclusion of this operating series. Love to have some feedback, by the way, and I'd love to see you again next time on the Wallace branch.